Okay guys, I went ahead and got the 60-in-1 PCB mounted there, and I've got it set up where I can get to the jammer connector edge and it won't put too much stress on the jammer wire loom, and it still leaves a little room if we ever want to come back and hook the Donkey Kong up, and we won't necessarily have to move that out of the way. But we can get to the jumper switches. It's got a few on there to select some options. And if I ever wanted to hook up a secondary monitor for any reason, testing or alternate power supply or anything, I can get to all those connections there. So it's mounted under that board, and I made sure I put it in a place where the rear door can go on and it's not going to bump into it. So it's got clearance. Now I just used some of these that I had left over from years ago. I can't remember. I think I put something on the main cab with these. I'm trying to remember. There was something I mounted in the back. I think the main motherboard for the computer. I think I used those for that in the main cab. And I had a bunch of them left over, so I just kind of marked me off a spot and tried to make it look good there, and pre-drilled me a few holes with the good old trusty DeWalt there and a small drill bit. I made sure it wasn't going to go all the way through the wood, just enough to start the screws. Okay guys, I just cut the little zip ties that were on here. Someone had put a protective piece of plastic, which is not a bad idea, on the remote board traces and the solder joints on the back. And I was taking these off because I'm installing some of these standoff feet, the same type that I used up here on the 60-in-1. And I'm going to put a couple on here, and I think I found a decent place that I want to mount on top of the coin box so I can access these controls for the monitor through the coin door in the front. Open this up because I need to put a tie down on the wiring harness. Let's see if it's hanging out of the box. It's so freaking long. But the wiring harness to connect to the control panel, this thing's got like an extra, you see how far I can stretch it? It might have been that way from the factory, but my goodness, it's just dangling way down in there. It was actually getting caught in the coin door. So there's these built-in ties on this cabinet. There's one right there, and it's holding some of the wiring for the coin door and stuff. And there's another one right there. I'm going to loosen one and just tie this up a little bit to kind of get it out of our way. While I was down here, I went ahead and kind of rerouted some wires for the coin mechs, and just where they link up to the jammer harness, because it was just dangling. It was scrubbing the coin box every time the door opened and closed. So I just kind of got them a little neater tucked up in there and used some of the built-in kind of wire ties or routers that were in the coin door. They didn't look like, I mean, they're just like this one. They didn't look like they'd been used much. And those were probably supposed to help route the wires not only for the coin mechs, but for the coin counter, which is supposed to be mounted right here, and the service switch. I think it's supposed to mount right here somewhere. And I'd like to put another service switch back in, but I did notice while I was doing this, you might not be able to see. Let's see. Let me move it. There's some wires right here. You might be able to see that have been cut. And I think those are for the service switch. As a matter of fact, I know one of them's for the service switch because it's white with a brown stripe. And I came across it on the jammer harness while I was looking for other things yesterday. And the rest is probably the voltage supply for the coin counter and such. You know, there's about 4 wires or so nicked there. And I may restore those in the future. But right now, you can see as you go to close it, it's clearing the coin door a little better. They were scrubbing pretty bad there. Okay guys, I was sitting here trying to figure out how to mount my remote board, and of course I had those little PCB standoffs, and it just wasn't mounting in a way that I thought would be, you know, easy to reach and look at the pots and see what they were. I mean, of course we all kind of feel for a pot and wiggle it and say, oh, is that the horizontal width, you know, is that the brightness, is that the contrast, what is it? But it is nice to be able to look in there and kind of see the labeling. So anyway, I was trying to mount this on that coin box. It was either not high enough to see the screen printing, or it was turned the wrong direction, or crimping the wire some way. And then finally I was just looking at the coin door. I said, look at these really long bolts coming out of the top of each coin mech and the bottom of each coin mech. So after a few minutes, I started looking. I said, now the text is up right there. And I started wiggling these little PCB standoffs around, and I said, well, look at this. I said, that right there will line up. Again, doing this one-handed, and my eyes aren't that great. And then look at there. I'm like, I'll be dad burn. If I can find some taps, I can mount that right there, and it looks like it might have been made to go there. Now, I've never seen monitor adjustments on a coin door. And I guess if somebody was getting mad and kicking the thing or something, you might have problems with damaged pots or something. But this is going to see home use, so I think that'll work out. Now, I'm going to have to take that long cord, and I think not run it under here because it's going to scrub the coin box. I think I'm going to have to put this right up here on top, and I think it'll just sneak by and have just enough room to close the door because we've got plenty of cable, and I can kind of route it and put a strain relief here and there. But the only thing I need is taps. Well, guess what? I went and looked in my spare parts, and I don't have a tap to fit those threads. I tried and couldn't find anything. But I have a lock washer and a normal washer, and if I take the taps that are already on here and slide them all the way to the end to hold this on, well, yeah, the coin door is going to be loose. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? What I really need is like 2 more taps, one to put like right here, and maybe a couple of lock washers or a lock washer to put right here, and then put a tap in front of it to lock it against that. And I'm like, well, think about it this way, and don't ask me where this came from. It is a very hard plastic straw. I can't remember what this came from. I'm trying to think. It's probably from a child's toy. We have so many little nieces and nephews that run around. I think it came off something one of them had, and it was just thrown in a junk drawer, but it's a really thick piece of plastic. I mean, it's a lot harder than just a straw. And it happens to fit very snugly over these bolts. If you can see, it is kind of snug, but it's just plastic. It shouldn't hurt the threads. And I can cut a length of that and basically space between where the washer is behind that tap and up where I need the tap to go, well, actually the back of the PCB standoff, and space it, and then put a couple of washers in front of it and tighten that nut back in the front of here, and it will not only hold the remote adjustment board in place, but there's no way that the coin mech will be able to move because there's just no room for it to move there, and then you've got 3 other bolts and 3 other washers and taps holding it in the other 3 corners. So we're going to do that. Okay guys, we got the tap taken off on the back here. You can see this is just a piece of plastic tubing that we've put over this threaded connection, and there's a metal washer there. On the other side is just trying to remember, I guess, I don't know, it's got a square head behind it. I generally call those like lag bolts if I'm doing anything with some type of wood or carpentry, and those will bite into like a piece of wood since they've got that square behind there, and they won't turn. They'll resist turning. Well, I'm sure that's shaped into a square there. Yep. So once that goes in, it's like you don't need a screwdriver or anything. It just kind of locks itself in place and it won't turn. But anyway, that's not the side we're really concerned about. We've got the metal washer there that's original. Got the little piece of plastic that I cut off of that tube, and I just use a pair of angle cutters, and I'm probably not going to cut absolutely square, but it's close enough. The main thing is to get it the same length as the one from the other side. You don't want to be off by more than a millimeter or so. Once we do that, we're going to take, let's see, the standoff and put it over here like that, and then we're going to take washer, put it over that to keep the nut from going down in there, because that does have a slight recess to it. I'll put the washer over that, and a lock washer, and then the final thing will be this right here. I need to quit holding my phone with my right hand because I'm not left-handed. But anyway, we're going to cinch this down, and we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. And then when we're done, The reason I couldn't attach that remote board straight to the bolts without these is that it might have been a 1/4 inch off from left to right, lining up with the screw holes that are in the sides of this remote board. I would have just put those straight through and put the nuts on the other side of the remote board and just cinched it right to it, but I would have had to really bow these nuts in, and I didn't want to do that, and it wouldn't have worked out good. We'll be back in a second. Okay guys, we got the hardware up here in place, and it's tight enough. I only did kind of a little more than hand tight. You know, you can move the whole coin door with it. It's not going anywhere, and I didn't want to crank down on it too much because the only thing we've got kind of structurally between all this that's being tightened up is just that little plastic tube. And like I say, it's pretty thick, so I don't think it's going anywhere. It's just being a spacer for us, and it actually doesn't look that bad. We're going to take and mount this up. We've got to be able to mount it this way because we want to be able to read our pots. And as you can see, it's lined up really good there. We just got to run the screws in there, and I think it'll look like it's kind of factory. Probably the worst part would just be routing this big thick cable, and we got plenty of room behind here to kind of route it through there and then come up underneath the top edge of the coin door and get it in a position where the door can open and close without crimping on the cable. So we're going to do that, and we'll be right back. Okay guys, we got it all mounted up. I think it looks like it belongs there. I mean, I really do. I'm not saying that's the most perfect way you could mount something, but the spacing, you know, besides not lining up perfectly with the board, and I had to use the little PCB standoffs, you see I'm not letting anything short. Trying to get my, there you go. Not only do we have the plastic film on the back of the PCB for the remote control board, but there's probably a little less than 1/4 inch between the studs and the back of the PCB. And believe me, this thing, I mean, look at it. It's rock solid. No problem at all. And we run the cable up above. Just snuck it in the coin door there. And I know we won't always be able to use that if we put the original donkey cord board back in, but there was some little plastic clips that hold the PCB in one of the boards of the 2 board set, and you just click them together or loosen them. You can see the one. Let's see if I can zoom this thing. See one back there that's open? They're easy to pop together and then close back up. And I just used one of them right there, and it's relatively loose. You can move this cord out and back, and it just slides in and out. You can see it moving now. And so even when you close the coin door all the way, it just slides back, and the door shuts. Let's get this back to a 1X. Oh my gosh. Woo, that's not the right way. Digital touchscreen stuff is kind of hard to use sometimes. But as you can see now, it does scrub just a little bit when you go to open it up, but that is such a thick, thick cable. If I tried to pull it down any harder with some type of tie down over here, it's just going to put undue stress on the cable and the remote adjustment board too. I mean, this sucker is thicker than the power cord's insulation or sheathing on the outside. It's actually a wider diameter than the power cord. It's got real good insulation on it. But no more than I'm going to be opening and closing the door. I'm sure if any kind of wear started happening right there at that point, I would notice before there was any trouble. And I mean, it's just barely, once it's shut, it's not even touching. It's just on the way open and close, it kind of bumps a little. But except for the marquee light, that is every single bit of everything we need to do as far as wiring. The marquee light, there's its cord there. I still have to run a little bit of an extension down and pull AC power for it. But we can test the game now if we want to. And I still have to cut the shroud or black bezel that goes around the CRT to kind of hide the edges of it. I have to cut I think it's 1/2 inch or so off each side of it. I can't remember the exact amount, 3/4 inch maybe off each side. And just have to wipe down the painted up marquee, the front, not marquee, bezel. I don't know whether you call the black shroud the bezel or the plexiglass in the front. If it's got artwork on it, the bezel, I would just say plexi. So maybe that's the best thing to say. But you can see all our wiring done. There's lots of it. There where that remote adjustment board, you can see the thick gray cable comes down. I do want to put one strain relief right there to hold it up on the monitor shelf, so it's not putting too much pressure on that ground wire or anything. But everything else, she's ready to go. And when we first start testing this, I'm going to unplug the monitor and unplug the JAMA harness from the 16-1 board. And first we're going to test voltages when we first power it up. Then I think I'm going to go ahead and plug up the 16-1 board and just see if I get, you know, the PCB playing blind, hear some sound and stuff. And then finally I'm going to hook power up to the chassis and see if we get a screen, because I just want to be real careful and go step by step. And going to measure the voltages after we get the monitor fired up too.